Where do we draw the line for states' rights and federal laws? Let's talk about it on Azimuth Podcast. I'm Kimberly McNabb, and with me is Barrett McNabb.
So President Biden has changed Title IX via an executive order to force schools to require trans women in bathrooms and spaces or face losing federal funding. And this is amazing because officials in Arkansas, Florida, Texas, and Oklahoma, and Louisiana, and some other states as well, have instructed their schools to ignore President Joe Biden's rewrite of Title IX.
And 15 states have sued the Biden administration for changes it made to Title IX under the guise of protecting trans people, according to Epoch Times. Well, the original intent of Title IX was to protect women, a far larger percentage of the population than trans women, and it's to protect women from almost the same percentage of the population, meaning men.
Right. And that makes a lot of sense. So when we have red states wanting to go against the federal law, you know, what does that mean? I mean, we have blue states that are going against federal law.
Yeah, all the time with sanctuary cities. I mean, we have federal immigration laws on the books, so that's going against federal law. And then we have blue states with selling marijuana.
Right.
And the federal law prohibits marijuana. So where do we draw the line?
Yeah, I mean, it's let's start with the sanctuary cities. So, you know, the federal law, and then state laws that have been overturned by the Supreme Court or stayed by the Supreme Court, and then local ordinances which occur at the municipality level. You know, there's this patchwork of things that go on, and there's a lot of intricacies. But one of the biggest arguments is that local law enforcement don't have the power to enforce federal laws, right? And that's what the Supreme Court is saying, that the state of Texas doesn't have a right to close its border and enforce federal law. And obviously, this is being litigated again and again. It's going to be in front of the Supreme Court, and we'll see what the final say is. But I'd say these are different. One is to preserve and stop the invasion of illegal immigrants, and the other is robbing women of their safe spaces.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, you know, and then let's go to the marijuana. So, you know, at the federal level, marijuana is illegal. It's currently being discussed that it's going to be dropped down from, I believe it's a Schedule 4 to a Schedule 3 drug, which will put it on par with like Tylenol 3, which is codeine in it and things like that. So it's going to say that it does have some medical use, which would free up the ability for doctors to write prescriptions. But still, a lot of blue states have just decriminalized it and said that not only can medical marijuana users get medical marijuana with a card, but also that recreational use. And so that makes it problematic. I mean, which laws are going to be enforced? Now, the executive branch and law enforcement have one of the most powerful tools at their disposal for law enforcement and for crime mitigation, and that is discretion. Right. Yeah. So your interaction with a law enforcement officer. So say you get pulled over for speeding. The law enforcement officer can give you a ticket, and you'll have to pay a fine, or they could give you a written warning, or they could just give you a verbal warning. They have the discretion to do that. And it's the same thing with other interactions of law enforcement officers. Is you know, they have the discretion on whether to enforce the law. Now, my question is, how does the federal government cherry pick which laws are going to be enforced and which laws don't? And it's confusing, in my opinion, to both federal law enforcement and for local law enforcement, because as various political parties, get into a various administration, it flips, it changes all the time. And so, I can definitely see a lot of confusion at the local and federal law enforcement level. But this is not a law enforcement issue. I would think this would be a civil case if a woman or a trans woman, felt that they were excluded for some reason for a facility under Title IX. Mm-hmm. I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, the original intent is to protect women, right. And that, we go from sympathy, whereas a few years ago this was not so out there and blown up in your face. And so if someone's convincingly, showing themselves as a woman, but they're biologically a male, but they seem at least to be trying,
Right.
then it's understandable. But we've just abused empathy
And blurred that line.
And you have these cases like where Planet Fitness, that dude was not trying at all.
Right.
I mean, he was definitely a, what do you call it, onogonophile,
Right.
where they like dressing up like women and they get off on it. And so, and we have cases of women or girls getting abused and attacked by biological males in female bathrooms. I mean, there was a case in North Carolina where a teenage girl got assaulted and,
Right.
and I think raped by a biological male in
the school district
girls' bathroom.
shifted the person to another school and didn't do anything.
Right.
So that was the big problem.
Yeah, I hate abusing empathy.
Yeah.
People's inclination towards empathy.
And so again, this the withholding of federal funds, again, not a criminal matter, but a civil matter for these universities. Now, the thing is it's going to affect universities in different ways, depending upon the size of their endowment. Now, Harvard has obviously shown itself to be an extremely liberal school with all the protests and all the Ivy League. And most of these Ivy League schools have a large enough endowment that no student would ever have to pay tuition ever moving forward.
Yeah,
right?
But smaller schools don't have that luxury. And,
Exactly.
Public middle schools don't have that luxury.
Exactly. And so you're going to see the liberal schools, doesn't matter if it's at the collegiate level, at the high school level, at the middle school level, they're going to say, doesn't matter to us if you take away federal funding, because we have a large enough thing. Now obviously a lot of the schools that can say that, they're already doing all the DEI and all the
it's just one more checkbox.
One more checkbox for them. But the withholding of federal funds, it's not new. It's not new. I mean, when the United States decided to try and shift the legal drinking age to 21. A lot of states were holdouts that
I think Louisiana
was the last one, and it was 18. New York State was 18 for the longest time, and then in I believe it was 1982 they changed to 19, and then it was 1985 I believe. Fact check me in the comments below. 1985 that they finally transitioned all the way to 21, but still it was the same thing. The federal government said, look, we want 21 to be the legal drinking age, and we'll withhold federal highway funds from you until we get it.
Well, couldn't they do the same thing for not enforcing federal marijuana laws or sanctuary cities as well?
Yeah, I mean that's the biggest problem for most of those, especially in the beginning when states just initially passed it, like Colorado and things like that. Banks are federal, right? Because they're controlled by the federal government, just for the fact that they have the FDIC insurance, and so they need to follow federal laws. And so banks were refusing to take cash deposits from these marijuana businesses for fear that the federal government was going to come in and seize the funds and seize the bank assets, because it would be a conspiracy to facilitate drug and money laundering. And so that there was that big fear.
Well, so the businesses kind of being punished, but not the cities or states allowing it.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, an argument could be made. That the mayor and the legislatures of cities and the governor and the legislatures of states that are voting to do this, to legalize marijuana, an argument could be made that it's a conspiracy to commit drug trafficking. I mean, if push came to shove, you could make the argument. Now, I don't know if it would stick in court. I don't know if a liberal federal judge would just be like, nah, we're going to let this go. But an argument could be made that the governor and the legislatures are facilitating in the distribution of Schedule 4 drugs.
I wonder, could an argument be made with President Biden making this order? Is there really authority there to make that kind of change to Title IX? I mean, it didn't go through Congress or the courts.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, obviously, it's going to be challenged immediately, and it already is. 15 states are challenging it. But there is a two types of things, the executive privileges that the president can do: executive actions and executive orders. And so one is more powerful than the other, and has different weight as it pertains to how it affects policy and how it affects the fourth level of government, which is the bureaucracy. They call that the fourth state, and it's interesting to see how his legal authority can do that, because what the court system is going to do is this language that the president executive branch is making, is it consistent with what the intent of what Congress did when they wrote the law? And that's being used by Dobbs and Bruin for the EPA and things like that. I mean, we have these agencies that were not elected. They don't have the power to write laws, but they're just doing these rules. Mm-hmm. And they're doing rule changes and adding rules, and that is what the big center of gravity is for the various lawsuits that are going. It doesn't matter what the agency is, the ATF, the EPA, Department of Energy. It doesn't matter what the lawsuit is. It all comes down to what is the authority of these alphabet agencies versus what Congress has authorized in the law.
Is there any way that legislature could overturn this?
Yeah. So I mean, here's the problem that you have, and that this is one of the reasons why it's so nasty that people use litigation in order to rewrite laws, make new laws, and the Supreme Court is really hesitant. And it doesn't matter if it was a left-leaning court or a right-leaning court. They are on the by and by very hesitant to legislate from the bench, right? Now they get stuff thrust in front of them all the time, but they don't like it. And that's oftentimes why their rulings or their opinions are very narrow in scope, because they don't want to throw out an entire law. They'll usually cherry pick on just one legal.
That, or they'll just kick the can down the road.
Yeah, or they kick it back down to the appellate courts and say, you guys figure it out a little bit more, do a little bit more homework, and send it back up to us. But the problem with the question that you asked is, can Congress legislate this away? And the answer is yes, but you
make it difficult to enforce somehow.
Yeah, but you have a narrowly controlled Republican majority in the House of Representatives and a Democrat majority in the Senate, and so then an executive that's a Democrat. So I don't see how this is going to. I mean, this is why it immediately goes to the courts, because of that disparity of bipartisanship.
Right.
But it's complicated. I mean, it's really complicated. I mean, what needs to happen, the best way is for the Republican base to galvanize and surround the presumptive nominee candidate, and have a new sitting president be able to overturn the existing executive orders. I want to say when Biden took over, he overturned or did away with at least 97% of the executive orders and executive actions that President Trump did. Just like with a stroke of a pen, like repealed. And in a lot of stuff that was common sense, like the border. And immediately upon that happening, we've had this huge flood, and under President Trump, we had the safest border. So unfortunately, with the stroke of a pen, you can get rid of these executive orders, which why it's kind of important to have it be law and have it go through Congress and then be signed into law by the president. But still, courts have used executive action and upheld them and struck them down. So it's and I don't even know what the ratio is, but I bet it's 50-50 at least.
Well, with all these states suing over this and that, resisting this and that, it feels like sometimes there's going to be a civil war. And I think the Biden administration has seen the Civil War movie like we have,
Probably.
and preparing for it, because there's a proposal for the Secretary of the Air Force to be able to transfer authority of the Air National Guard
Right.
To the Space Force without the consent of states' governors. And
Texas
that would
Governor
give them
Abbott.
a lot less power to fight back with.
Yeah. Texas Governor Abbott is pushing back hard on this, saying that this directly impinges on a governor, not just Texas, but a governor to control its state guards, whether it be the Army National Guard or the Air Guard. And, this is a huge thing for states' rights versus big federal government. But tell us in the comments what you think, how Title IX should be addressed, and also how, just even just the Air National Guard go into the Space Force just at a whim. It's being fought by Texas, but we want to know what you have to think. But thank you so much for tuning in to Azimuth Podcast, and please stay tuned after these messages.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy our show with all the stories we share, we would love your support.
And it's as easy as clicking that subscribe or follow button. This will ensure you never miss an episode and keeps us bringing you these important stories. Your support makes a huge difference. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast family.
Thanks, and keep tuning in.